Hey guys, it's Heather coming to you from our vintage camp trailer. It's pouring down rain outside, so I couldn't do this outside, but I wanted to go over some tips that I found for camp cooking. I get a lot of comments about my cooking, and I thought I'd just share some tips with you. Most of the camp cooking that we do is overland camp cooking, but the recipes can apply to any type of camp cooking. I like to keep things really easy, so I like to use either one skillet or one pot, and I like to keep things healthy and use a lot of vegetables. If you're doing a weekend trip, it's easy just to pack any kind of vegetable or protein that you want and not have to worry about it. But when we do extended trips that are a week or longer, you really have to plan out what you're going to make and what can last in your refrigerator. I've come to depend a lot on pantry items, and I'll go over some of those with you. And for vegetables, I found that you can use the more delicate vegetables early on in the trip and use the hardier vegetables later in the trip. And I'll show you some examples of some of those. Let's get started. First, let's talk about fresh ingredients like fruits and vegetables. Delicate vegetables like mushrooms and lettuce should be used early on in the trip. And then hardier vegetables like cabbage and carrots that last a long time and can roll around in the cooler, those can be used later on in the trip. For fruit, we like to use bananas, for instance, but they can be kind of smelly. So we don't keep them in the cooler, and I don't keep them in my pantry box. They actually stay in the toolbox in the back of the truck, but they last fine back there. Apples are great because you don't have to peel them. You can just take a bite, and they're pretty self-contained. We usually keep these in the cab of the truck for snacking on. Now, when I bring something like avocados along, I like to use a sturdier container. I have these plastic containers, just keeps them from getting smashed when they're sitting in the cooler. Same thing with fruit like berries or tomatoes like I have in this one. Keeps them safe. And then I always have onion and garlic, and those go in most of my dinner recipes. So I just keep those in my pantry box in just a little muslin bag, just like that. And they stay good for a really long time. Now for long-lasting, fresher vegetables, one of my favorites is a sweet potato, and we use this in our curry, and I make breakfast hash with it. You can eat the skin. They last a really long time, and they cook faster than a regular white potato. For greens, we always bring greens. I like these power greens. Sometimes we grow our own or have a farm share that we get, and they last a really long time because they're so fresh. But they're hardier greens like kale and Swiss chards. They last a lot longer. And these can be used in a wrap as you would use lettuce, but they can also be cooked, so you can throw them in pasta dishes and soups and things like that. One of the hardiest is cabbage. This stuff will last forever, and if it starts looking bad, you just peel a layer off or cut the end off, and it'll just keep on going. So that's a really good one for the end of the trip. And then of course carrots are simple. They last a long time. If I buy these already peeled little baby carrots, so it's just easy. You can snack on them. So these are some of the things that I like to use to keep things easy and keep things healthy. So some tips for breakfast. I like to pre-cook my bacon. I usually use turkey bacon. I pre-cook it because it's so messy and you're left with all that grease when you're cooking it out in the open, and that can attract a lot of wildlife. So I found that just pre-cooking it, putting it in a bag, it lasts quite a while, and I can easily add it to recipes or just eat it for breakfast. When we're bringing eggs along, I like to use these egg containers here. They keep the eggs from getting broken, of course. They come in a 12 or a 6-pack. What I have found, we get eggs from our neighbor, and some of them can be very large, and they can break when you try and close the lid on this. So I always just look for the smaller eggs that she gives us, or if I'm buying eggs, the medium eggs work really well in these without cracking. And when it comes to cooking eggs, I like to use this little nonstick pan. It doesn't take up much room. It's meant just for eggs. I can cook 2 eggs at a time in it, and it just makes things a lot easier. Another breakfast hack are these dehydrated hash brown potatoes. These things are so cool. You don't have to use them for breakfast or for hash. You can use them in all kinds of different recipes. But what you do is put hot water in and let them soak for 10 or 15 minutes and then drain the water. And then they're rehydrated and you can cook them any way that you want after that. So they cook really fast. So we really like these. Some of our easiest and fastest camp breakfasts include frozen waffles or rice cakes with nut butter and banana, or a simple toasted bagel or English muffin with cream cheese. But my all-time favorite easy breakfast is overnight oats. Sometimes I forget to soak the oats before we go to bed at night, but you can soak them for just an hour in the morning and they're good to go. We usually add fruit or nut butter or dried fruit. Sometimes on a cold morning it's nice to have hot oatmeal, and that's another easy meal. On this particular trip, we completely forgot to pack breakfast food, so in my pantry I happen to have a can of corned beef, and we also used our magic potatoes and just made a really quick and easy hash. Breakfast hash is one of our favorites because it's so easy to make and you can use whatever ingredients you happen to have. Here I'm making a sweet potato hash, and I used my special egg pan. This recipe idea came from Jason from Primal Outdoors. He used polenta instead of biscuits for a biscuits and gravy type breakfast, and I just thought it was genius. Another delicious breakfast are breakfast sandwiches. And for this take, I used the pre-cooked bacon that I brought from home, eggs, cheese, and avocado, and they were really good. And here's the yellow jackets. Because we keep our lunches so simple, we're usually traveling during the day and don't like to take a lot of time to stop and cook a meal. This will be brief for lunch, but we like to use wraps. And you can use your lunch meat or cheese or the greens that I showed before. All of that can be rolled up into a simple wrap. These don't take up much room. You can put them in your pantry bin and they lay flat and they're very easy. Since we don't like to cook for lunch, a lot of times if we're driving through a town, we'll stop and try a local restaurant. But most often we're just going to stop and have cheese and crackers in a really scenic location. Or just stop and make a simple wrap. And this is lunch. Some other products that I found that are shelf stable and can live in your pantry box and be really simple to use are these instant rice packets. They come in all different flavors. This one's Thai lime, coconut rice, brown rice. They even have things like quinoa in a bag. So these are all really convenient. All you do is open them up, pour them into your pan, and heat them up. Some other ingredients that are really shelf stable and easy to prepare are the potato gnocchi. These cook really quickly. They're very delicious. I talked last time in my video about chickpea pasta, and this stuff is really great. It cooks just like regular pasta, but it has a lot of protein. So we like to use that. Another simple ingredient is polenta in a roll like this. You just slice it off and grill it up. Other foods that are convenient that we keep on hand are things like black beans or refried beans. When I find these small cans of vegetables, I like to pick them up because I'm just cooking for 2 people. So these are great for us. Corn and peas. They have all different kinds though. I also do a lot of home canning, and so I bring some of my canned products along. I have things like tuna. I even canned roast chicken. Although this doesn't work great in certain recipes, it's better for like a chicken salad or something like that. I made spaghetti sauce that already has the meat in it. So this is really simple. You just cook up some of the chickpea pasta or some of the gnocchi and throw this over the top. And of course, chili, always a favorite camping meal. So this is canned with no beans, so I would add a small can of beans to it and we'd have a meal for two. Now to keep these from breaking, we always get tons of these koozies everywhere we go. So I found that you can slide these over the jars and then they pack really well in my pantry and then it keeps them from clanging around. They work really well. Another way to add a lot of flavor to a meal is through adding different seasonings. And Trey found a website where you can order small packets of things like lemon juice and vinegar. Of course, you can always save your soy sauce packages when you get takeout. I really like these little olive packets from Trader Joe's. They're great for our charcuterie board. Whenever I find small jars of things or containers of things, I like to pick them up. This is our California balsamic. I'll leave a link below to the website where Trey orders a lot of these things. We found these shelf-stable small packages of hollandaise sauce at Safeway. Those are very convenient if you want a fancy breakfast too, or brunch. So we've got mayonnaise, soy sauce, brown mustard, lemon juice, malt vinegar, red wine vinegar, tapatio, salsa, sriracha, the tahini, and hot sauce, and Tabasco. And for cooking oil, I usually use olive oil or coconut oil or ghee. I like the coconut oil and ghee because they're very shelf stable. They can be in the pantry. They're usually at solid form unless it's really warm out, so they're not going to spill. Yeah, if you haven't tried ghee, give that a try. It's a very buttery flavor. It's really good. One of these days I'll catch a fish and be able to cook a fish dinner. But we did get to experience a catch and cook when we were on the Oregon coast and we went clamming. We got a few different varieties of clams and took them back to camp and cleaned them up. We decided to make fried razor clams, but we didn't have a lot of the ingredients we needed, so we had to be creative. Trey used a package of crackers that he pounded up. We borrowed some oil from Lab Wagon Shane, our friend. We were even gifted some fresh crab from fellow travelers, and we had the most delicious meal. On this trip, we were only going for the weekend, so I was able to use a lot of fresh ingredients. During the summer, I have a lot more vegetables to choose from, so stir fries are a really excellent choice. I made this stir fry sauce at home, but you could use any bottled stir fry sauce that you prefer. And basically just throw all the ingredients in the pan. And this is dinner. On this particular trip, we were warned ahead of time about how bad the yellow jackets were, so we decided to make meals that didn't include cooking meat, and I made this veggie stir fry that turned out great. And it also kept the yellow jackets away. You basically just saute all the ingredients in the pan, mix everything up. You can add any seasonings that you like, and I used, to make it really easy, a package of the pre-cooked rice. Really simple meal. Toward the beginning of the trip, I usually have meat on hand, like ground beef or, in this case, ground turkey. And for this recipe, I made egg roll in a bowl using vegetables, the ground turkey, and the secret ingredient is this Asian salad kit. I usually just use the greens and throw away the dressing, but I use the toppings at the end of the recipe. I added some of my balsamic glaze, and then also one of the little packages of sriracha for some heat. And because we were feeding extra people on this trip, I added a package of the instant rice just to bulk up the meal. This is egg roll in a bowl. If you've watched our channel, you know that chicken curry is one of my favorite camp meals, And this one came together very easily with some pantry ingredients and some vegetables I had rolling around in the cooler. The zucchini's looking a little sad, but I just cut off the bruised parts and used it anyway. And I love this sous vide chicken. I get it in packages at Costco so that I don't have to mess with raw chicken at camp, which is an absolute nightmare for me. Of course, you can't talk about camp cooking without mentioning just a basic sausage on a bun, which is always a favorite at camp. You can never go wrong with tacos. They're simple and delicious, and there's so many different variations. I like that you can use a lot of the same ingredients the next morning for breakfast tacos. This is my go-to recipe for those nights where you come into camp late and you don't really feel like cooking. It's any kind of sausage that you want, any kind of vegetable you want, and some instant rice. Saute it all in a pan, and that's dinner. And there's so many different variations depending on the type of sausage that you use or the vegetables that you use. Here's another variation of the sausage dinner where I use the potato gnocchi instead of rice. And this was the very end of the trip, so I used my hearty fruits and vegetables like an apple and cabbage. These pre-cooked sausages are perfect for the end of the trip because they last a long time in the refrigerator. I also added a couple little packages of the red wine vinegar and just gave it kind of a sweet and sour taste. Believe it or not, my absolute favorite camp meal is charcuterie. I love to take whatever meats and cheese and vegetables and fruit we have left over and throw it out and enjoy it with some wine. If you have any questions about any of the products or ingredients that I use, please leave it in the comments. I hope you found this informative, and thanks for watching.